and welcome to the Can It Take a K26 Skinny Spring Special. This is going to be similar to the AEB special, the Hammer Prime special, and the Vortex special in that I'm going to be discussing a wide variety of blasters that all have one particular element in common that basically ensures that they're not going to be able to take a K26, and rather than wasting half a dozen episodes going over them in pairs, I'm just going to go over them all together and save a lot of time. And as the title would suggest, the element that they all have in common is that they all use a skinny spring, a long, skinny spring, as opposed to the shorter, squatter springs that we're used to in a lot of Nerf blasters. Now, K26, while it does come in a sufficiently long length, is significantly larger in diameter. It's similar to what we see in rival blasters and a lot of other blasters. And it turns out the blasters that are built specifically around this spring geometry are not going to be able to take a K26. So let's take a look at a bunch of them. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but this should give you an idea of the ones to look out for and, you know, the ones that take these skinny springs. So let's take a look. You have to admit that is a lovely spread. We have the Dart Zone Pro Mark 1, 1.1, 1.2, and 4, the Nexus Pro, the Max Striker, we have the Game Face Tryon, and we have the Workers Swift, Harrier, and Seagull. And all of these take a skinny spring, and so almost certainly can't take a K26. I've got one more that's kind of an honorable mention of sorts. It's, as far as I know, one of the first blasters that utilized a skinny spring that was compressed back into the stock, and that is the Worker Prophecy. And it kind of built on a legacy mod concept, which was a power stock. And here, the stock came off, and we had a skinnier spring. It's not as skinny as the modern ones are, but it was certainly skinnier than most Nerf springs at that time, and it was specifically designed to compress back into the stock. And this is something we had done with power stocks before Worker really got into the game and up and changed everything. But this was kind of an early example of this. And this couldn't take a K26 either, because it's basically a retaliator with just better design. But it was kind of the forerunner of the concept of the skinny spring that went back into the buffer tube. And since most of these have a standard AR-style buffer tube, the geometry is limited. They have to make it a certain size so that it will be standard across whatever stock you want to put on there. And so they had to go with an even skinnier spring to be able to fit it in there, yet still have enough material to be able to close it and have it be solid and all of that. And so they went to a skinnier, longer spring in order to get the same amount of power. And a lot of these, obviously, a lot more power. But it does mean that the geometry is such that you cannot use a K26 because it simply can't compress back into the buffer tube, or in the case of the 1.2 over here, it actually compresses into the plunger head. To give an example of what I mean by specifically engineered for skinny springs, this is the internals of the Dart Zone Pro Mark 1.2. And at first it doesn't look all that much different than a standard Nerf blaster until you look at the plunger head, the plunger itself. And it is long, and it is specifically designed for the skinny spring to fit inside it. And that is where it is actually compressing. It's not compressing around it like we see in a lot of blasters. It doesn't have a floating plunger head like we see in a lot of blasters. It is, in fact, compressing inside that spring. And so K26 is simply, I mean, even a standard spring is simply not going to fit in there. And the way it catches, it comes all the way back here and it catches right here with the spring fully inside. So it's not like you could cut that away and put a heavier spring in, because there would be no way for it to catch. There's no way. This is the catch all the way back here at the end. And while this one is a little bit different than most blasters, I will grant you, because rather than the bolt, you know, pressing into the plunger tube and forcing the plunger back, the bolt is connected to the plunger tube, and the whole plunger tube moves back and forward. which is somewhat different. But it definitely means there's no way K26 is going to fit in here. And while this isn't exactly the same in all the other blasters, it's similar in that the geometry is specifically designed to only work with a skinny spring. So, yeah, tragic, but there are lots of upgraded skinny springs out there that you can use instead. So, all right, to recap. So yeah, it has been specifically engineered so that only a skinny spring that can compress into the plunger head will work. It has a standard end strike attachment point, which is why it doesn't have a buffer tube, and they got around that by moving the whole plunger tube inside the blaster and compressing the spring into the plunger head. Really very inventive way of being able to give us a standard end strike attachment point instead of a buffer tube one. All the rest of these, the spring compresses into the buffer tube or into the stock. And so, yeah, that's why they can't take a K26. And I'm sure there are some blasters that I didn't go over here. There might be a few that I'm not aware of. And there might actually be upgrade kits for some of these that will make it so it can take a K26. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some way to get a Swift so it can, or maybe the Pro 4, but I don't have said kits. They definitely aren't stock. But wanted to get all of these out of the way because people keep requesting them over and over again, and up to this point I've just been ignoring it, and I realized I should just do a special and get them all out of the way. So there you go. There will be the survey down below as usual so that you can vote on next month's episode. We'll be going back to ones where I'm actually I really want to know if they can. And by all means, put recommendations for ones you'd like to see down in the comments, and they may end up on the survey later. I don't have the entire month planned out. Kind of, you've seen what blasters come out. I might try some new ones that come out this year. We'll see, but it will be what you guys vote on, so vote in the down in the survey. Thank you for watching.